Hello everyone and welcome to a new series of videos that I'm going to do, and the video series is entitled Topical Mumble, and in this series I'm just going to talk about my views and thoughts on video games, but actually focus on one particular topic per video rather than just have sort of random topics that I've had in the past where I've talked about various different things. I just think it enables me to get into a little bit more detail about the points that I want to make, and it's easier to do that. It's easier to do it in this type of format rather than just try and talk about 2 or 3 different things in one video. So, I hope anybody that watched this video, hope you enjoy it. Please feel free to leave any feedback in the comments section, and yeah, put your own comments and feelings down there in the comments section below. So I'm going to kick off and talk about, in episode 1, video game voice acting. Now the gameplay that I'm playing here is Destiny. Now the interesting thing here is when the game was first released, Peter Dinklage voiced a little robotic character called Ghost. Now Peter Dinklage is at the moment pretty hot property with Game of Thrones and so on and so forth, but what was interesting was when they released the major update, The Taken King, they replaced Peter Dinklage's voiceover with Nolan North. Now, Nolan North is an established voice actor. He does loads of different voiceovers in games. Throw a rock and you'll hit a game that he's provided some form of voiceover for. He's an absolute excellent voice actor. Now, at the time when they used Peter Dinklage, it was an attempt to sort of be like, hey, Peter Dinklage, he's really cool, let's stick him in there, he's excellent in Game of Thrones. But there was quite a lot of negative feedback to his actual voiceover work. Some people said, it was dialed in, it was some ridiculous, the whole that wizard came from the moon thing, it was going on. And now, although Bungie said that they used Nolan North because Peter Dinklage wasn't available to do the extra voiceover work for The Taken King, I think that's rather convenient. I think it was pretty much taken that they used that opportunity of releasing this big patch to get in an established voice actor to re-record all of the dialogue. I mean, let's face it, they could have easily somehow retconned a different voice for Ghost. It would have been a very easy thing to do. He could have just gone to a terminal, downloaded something, and he's got a new voice. They could have easily done that and kept Peter Dinklage's dialogue still present for the older stuff, for the vanilla version of Destiny, as it were. But they didn't do that. They completely re-recorded all of the dialogue, and they also made some changes to the dialogue as well. So it really sort of begs the question, is actually having a Hollywood voiceover actor, or a famous actor or famous movie star or whatever, actually beneficial, considering that one would imagine that you'd have to pay them a bit more money than you would do paying a sort of standard voiceover actor or an established voiceover actor, because the two things are actually quite different disciplines. Voiceover work, you can't rely on acting physically to help extenuate the words that you're saying. You can't, like, for example, a lot of acting can be done in the eyes, in the face, in gestures and stuff like that, but when you're doing voiceover work, it all has to be in the voice, because although there's a character on screen, people can't actually see you acting, and so you have to put a greater emphasis on acting purely with your voice, which is why you can quite often tell the difference between people that are used to doing voiceover work and people who are just used to acting physically on screen in a movie or on a TV show or even on a stage. And it's kind of interesting to me that you see these, they make such a big deal sometimes when they get a big major movie star. You remember Call of Duty Advanced Warfare? There was this whole big deal about, it's got Kevin Spacey in it, and he's actually going to be a digital character in the game. It's not just his voice, but his likeness as well. And there was this huge deal that was made out of that. But you have to ask yourself the question, did having Kevin Spacey in Advanced Warfare actually enhance it? The same can be said for the new Metal Gear Solid 5 game that came out last year. Now, they traditionally, Snake was voiced by David Hayter. Now they ditched him and brought in Kiefer Sutherland to voice over the Snake character in the game. And you have to wonder, did that make any difference? To my mind, the answer is no. In fact, even though I love Kiefer Sutherland, I think he's a fantastic actor. I absolutely love 24, love the films he's been in, The Lost Boys, and all of this. It didn't enhance anything. In fact, in many ways, I didn't really like it as much because I was used to Snake having a distinctive voice, and all of a sudden he's got a different voice. And I suppose that Konami, and I don't know, maybe to a lesser extent Kojima, I'm not too sure who was the main driving force behind that. To my mind, it took a little bit away from the character, but they would have had to have paid more to get Kiefer Sutherland to do the voiceover than David Hayter. Surely that would have been the case. So it's interesting to me that why would they do that? In an age where we hear AAA game studios bemoaning the rising costs of making video games, in an age where that's happening, it never ceases to amaze me that so many people are actually prepared to spend daft amounts of money in areas of the game development, such as the voiceover part, that aren't really that important. Of course, like a good voiceover, a good voice actor can impact a game. You know, we can look at the old Resident Evil games and we can laugh, you know, because the whole English thing, you know, where it was just so poorly translated and performed. But actually, in some ways, I always felt that kind of added a little bit to the game, and I do miss that. I miss how that is no longer part of video games in some respects. But it's like the pendulum has swung the other way. You get a glut of great voice actors: Nolan North, Troy Baker, Jennifer Hale. You know, these guys and gals have really, you know, been a part of some terrific voice acting work in video games. And then all of a sudden, they're gone. You know, well, not they're gone, but it's like there's a drive to bring in, let's bring in some Hollywood star to do it because we can put their name on the box, or we can use them as a marketing campaign. Like, you know, the selling point of Advanced Warfare often revolved around Kevin Spacey. He featured very, very heavily in the advertising campaign. But when you're actually playing the game, and, you know, he's just a character, he's just, you know, spoilers, the bad guy in the game, you know, he's in the background an awful lot. Yeah, you hear his voice from time to time, and he does have some time on camera, you know, as his digital acting performance is on camera. And from a technical standpoint, one can say, wow, you know, that's actually quite impressive. But did it enhance the game? I mean, you're talking about a first-person shooter here. The most important part of the game is actually the mechanics of the actual first-person shooter itself. Did actually having Kevin Spacey make that much difference? The answer to me is no, because while I'm playing the game, the actual part of the game that I'm engaged in the most is the mechanics of a first-person shooter. Kevin Spacey's just in a cutscene, and it really wouldn't have mattered to me had they just used a generic bad guy with a good voice actor. That wouldn't have made much difference to me. I think the character of Pagan Min, voiced by Troy Baker in Far Cry 4, was a far more interesting bad guy, was a far more engaging bad guy than Kevin Spacey's digital character was in Advanced Warfare, and that says a lot. You know, that says a lot about the wastage that goes on. This is my opinion, the wastage that goes on with bringing in voice talent into video games when the Hollywood stars, and they're not really needed. There is a great amount of voice talent that's already out there, and in fact it's interesting to see that, you know, some of these voice actors have started to get a little bit disenchanted because You know, their contribution is very, very important, and some of them, they're just not getting the financial remuneration that their contribution deserves. Now, some people will say, well, yeah, that sounds like you're contradicting yourself. If voice acting is that important, well then, having established Hollywood stars, surely that's the way to go. But you're forgetting, just because you're a good actor doesn't mean you're a good voice actor. And although I'm not saying that all of the Hollywood stars are bad voice actors, that's not the case at all. When you've got established people who are great at voice acting, who do a fantastic job at voice acting, surely it makes more sense to utilise that talent. Now, they're not asking to be paid what Kevin Spacey's going to get paid, what Kiefer Sutherland's going to get paid, blah blah blah. They're not asking that. They just want a fair share of, you know, the performance of the video game, which is fair enough. I mean, you employ these people, you're not going to be spending as much money as bringing in an established Hollywood talent. That's just the way it is. I mean, those, you know, somebody who's flavour of the month in Hollywood, you know, commands a higher fee, whether it's been in a movie, whether it's been in a TV show, whether it's doing commercials, so on and so forth. They're going to command a higher fee than somebody who isn't. You know, and a lot of voice actors, yeah, they can be used in television shows, they can be used in movies, but for the most part their strength lies in voice acting, and that's where they get a hell of a lot of their work from. You know, because they're not actually acting on a camera. Many of them don't. Many of them just act purely in voiceover work. So, you know, you can almost understand how they probably feel a little bit aggrieved as well. It was kind of interesting to see David Hayter having a little bit of a jibe at Kiefer Sutherland. It was all done playfully, it wasn't done maliciously, but, you know, over the fact that they're going to redo 24 without Jack Bauer, so without Kiefer Sutherland. It almost seems unimaginable to me that 24 will not have Jack Bauer in it. I think it's crazy. But again, you know, you have that thing, you know, there's a little playful jab, but there's also, you know, an intent behind that, because it's like, well, you know, for years David Hayter was the voice of Snake, and then all of a sudden he isn't. That's lost revenue. That's him out of a job, you know, for a character that he really helped create. And, you know, I think, you know, there is a valid point there. There is a valid point to say that if you're going to be complaining about the cost of video games, if you're loading video games with microtransactions, with DLC, and you're saying, well, we do this because the cost of video games is going up and up and up, and you're paying more to bring in voice actors from Hollywood as opposed to using the pool of talent that you've got, then I don't think you really can make that argument, because you're not using your money in the best way possible. Don't come to the consumer, don't go to the people who are buying your games and start selling them short with games that are broken up into pieces, with games that have content taken out of them and locked behind a bloody paywall. Don't start that malarkey and start pleading poverty while you're throwing money away in other areas. Remember, nobody asked for these AAA Hollywood actors or whoever to be put into video games. Nobody asked for that. People were happy with how it was. People were happy with David Hayter. You know? So, before you start banging that drum, before you start, you know, wailing about the rising costs of game development, have a look at how much money you're wasting in areas where you don't need to. And that really gets to the point of the video. You're squandering money in an area you don't need to spend that money. So before you start going on, and when people complain about content in video games being locked behind paywalls, when games are being rushed and released in an incomplete state, and you're saying, well, because we've got to meet these financial commitments, stop. Have a look at where you're throwing your money away. Have a look at where you're pushing your money out the door, where you're squandering it on. Because games can be developed and come in at a reasonable budget and sell without DLC and microtransactions to prop them up. Have a look where you're spending your money. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll be back again with another one soon.